guys. Thank you very much. You know, we've been talking about Jonah for the last couple of weeks and about his life and ministry and really about some of the things that I think God was trying to teach both him and us through his experiences there with the Ninevite people. So today, as we continue to examine his life and ministry, I want us to start by thinking about a couple of fun questions, okay? The first question I want you to think about is, what do you know? Okay, what do you know for certain? Now, here's some of the things that I think that I know. My name is Patrick Daniel Stevens. I was born in Kentucky. I feel pretty confident of that because of the way that I sound when I speak. My parents are Pat and Joni Stevens. I have two sons, one Dexter Patrick and one Archer Prince, and they are both 4 and 1, almost 1 actually. On February 2nd, the day of the men's conference, my son Archer will turn 1. And I'm married to my wife, Mindy Elizabeth. These are things that I think that I know. So do you know the same things about yourself? You know, where are you from, who your parents are, what your name is? Now let me ask you this question. How do you know that you know that? Okay? And this might sound ridiculous, but how do you know that you weren't created 5 seconds ago with the appearance of age and memories? Now, as ridiculous as that it sounds, there's really no way for us to prove that that didn't happen. Okay? So how do we know what we know? Do we really know what we think we know? Please read this verse aloud with me. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and turn away from evil. Good job, good job. Okay, so what did Jonah know? God asked him to go and to do a very specific task, which is to preach repentance to the Ninevites. What did he do? He ran away. He didn't want to do that. He got on the boat to the farthest place that he could think of and headed off there. And then on the way, God sends a storm, which must have been so terrible, so calamitous, that all the people on board thought it must be the wrath of a god. Somebody has angered a god and they're trying to destroy us. So they're all like calling out to their gods. What do we do? You know, please help us. Please. No help comes. So finally they go, they find Jonah, and they're like, tell us who was responsible for making all this trouble for us, they ask him. What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you? They wanted to know about him. Okay? What does Jonah say? He says, I am a Hebrew. That's how he identifies. I am a Hebrew. What does that mean? Well, the first time we see the word Hebrew in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 14. Okay, a lot of kings in the land of Canaan had come together and attacked and sacked the city of Sodom, which you might be familiar with for its infamous nature. Well, they carried away Lot, Abram's nephew. Okay, so one of his servants came back and they told him that, Abram, they took away your nephew. So Abram gathers up a bunch of people to go get him back. Well, what did they call Abram? They said that we went and told Abram the Hebrew. Okay, Abram the Hebrew. Hebrew in the Hebrew language actually means one from beyond, which we can surmise is talking about the nature of his foreignness. He wasn't from the land of Canaan. He was from the city of Ur in the Chaldees, which was far to the east of the place was. So he was referred to by the people as a foreigner, the one from beyond. Now, when Jonah identifies, he says, I'm a Hebrew, he means that I am descended from this man that they call the Hebrew, Abraham, through his son Isaac, through his son Jacob. The whole family, the line of the Hebrew people, it's essentially a family. They're a family, and so that's how he identifies. I am part of this family of Abram the Hebrew. Then he says, I worship the Lord, okay? And the Hebrew word for Lord there is Yahweh. It's the sacred tetragrammation. And so the Hebrew people, that word was so sacred to them, they wouldn't even say it. They would say Adonai, which means Lord, instead. That's why you see that translated that way. I serve the Lord, Yahweh, the God of heaven, Elohim. That's the word in Hebrew there. So I worship Yahweh, Elohim, who made the sea and the dry land. That is how Jonah identifies. So what does he know? He knows that he belongs to the family of God's people, and he knows that he serves Yahweh Elohim. How does he know these things? He knows them because God revealed himself to Abraham. He created the family. God told Jonah what he knows. Jonah knows what God told him, what he revealed to him. Now, you guys, depending on how familiar you are with me, you may or may not be surprised to know that I sit around and think about some pretty heady stuff. Like I think about thinking, for example, which is called metacognition. That's the technical term. And I really like to explore, the limits of the understanding that we as human beings can have. What can we know? What can we understand? How has God made this world? And I want to be able to see. And I'm a very curious person, like many of you probably are. And you like to see new things, to explore new ideas, and maybe read new books, and just see new stuff all the time. We like exploring. We're curious by nature. And God has created a wonderful universe for us, There's just so many wonderful things, and all the time I'm just amazed. Even at my age of 37 years, I still every day feel like I'm seeing stuff, learning stuff that I don't know. And huge areas, I'm being made aware of huge wonders that I had no idea that it existed, and it's just a joy to be able to experience that. I told you I have two sons, Dexter and Archer, and I really just love both of them. They're getting to the age, especially Dexter, where he's starting to learn a lot of new things. He's almost 4. And so he'll come in sometimes and say, "Daddy, watch this." And a couple days ago, he came in and he did like this kind of half cartwheel thing. And at the end of it, he was like, "Ta-da!" And I was like, "Oh, that's great, buddy. That's great. You did a cartwheel." He said, No, ninja moves. I was like, "Yeah, that's great." And it's just like, it might seem like a trivial little thing, but for him, he was so excited to be able to learn this new thing, to do it. And I was, even knowing it as a trivial thing, was so excited for him to be able to experience the joy that he was experiencing himself for this discovery that he had made. Another one that he did just a few weeks ago was he came in, he said, "Daddy, I know how to use the potty all by myself." And I was like, "Oh, great. And he goes, "Watch." And then he ran out of the room. About 10 minutes later, he comes back and he goes, "Ha." And I was like, "That's great, buddy, because now I don't have to help him go to the potty anymore." So, it's a win for me. But, or when he learns how to count to a new high number, or anything that he discovers, I just love to experience that joy with him. And I think that God does the same thing with us. When we are exploring God's creation, what he has made for us, and just taking joy in what he has made, he experiences that same type of feeling that we do when we're with our children, or with our nephews, or even our friends and family, when we delight in their joy in discovery. God does that as well. And just, God does delight in our discovery. I believe he has made the universe in a way that we can, and he's given us the faculties. He's made us be able to reason. In fact, in Isaiah, he invites us to reason with him. I think that's one of the things that makes us like God, is our ability to see and to have an intelligible grasp of our reality. But there are many things in this wonderful universe, I think, that God has put beyond our reach. And maybe he only lets us see a shadow of it, or just makes us aware of it, but we can't fully comprehend it. And I think that is for a purpose. Okay, and Scripture, I believe, backs this up. The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians says, "No eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no human mind has conceived what God has prepared for those who love him." No human mind has conceived, of all the billions of us that have lived. No mind has been able to imagine the things that God has made, these possibilities. I think that's a wonderful promise. I mean, what a joy it will be for us to forever experience these things that we can't even conceive that God has made for us. But that really kind of establishes that there's a hard limit to what we can see, what we can imagine. David in Psalm chapter 139 says, "God's knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty to attain." God's thoughts are beyond our thoughts. His ways are higher than our ways. What that means is there's a limit to our ways. There's a limit to our thoughts. God's far beyond us in that way. Guys, I want to impress to you today that I think for a lot of us, and for intelligent people and just people in general, sometimes we really think that we're smart and we have a grip on things, that our intellect is so great. Basically because we look at like a mouse or a chimp or something and we're like, oh, look how much smarter we are than this thing. You know, but that's not the standard. The standard is God's super intelligence, his infinite intellect. And compared to that, we're nothing. We're nothing. We can't impress God with our intellect. Okay? And God, I think he doesn't want us to try to do that. Anyway, he made us a certain way. He made us limited. What he wants is for us to trust him. The Bible says in Hebrews that it's impossible to please God without faith. Faith is not about so much intellect, although that's a component of it. It's about a relationship. It's about believing in him, trusting in him. Okay, our intellect can get us to a place where we know that what God says is faithful, what is true, that he knows and we don't. We believe things. He knows things. So a few weeks ago, I was watching YouTube. Sometimes I get going down a rabbit hole. You know how you start watching one video and then in 30 minutes you're like way off in somewhere else. And I was watching this documentary thing about the ocean and how deep it was, okay? And it's like super deep thing, and I learned a lot about it. But at some point in the ocean, as you go down, the light from the surface can't get any farther down, okay? It's 100% darkness down there. And so what I'm about to do in this next section of this little talk is I'm going to go down into the depths where you might not be able to see a little bit. I'm going to try to demonstrate to you guys a hard limit to what we can perceive and understand so that we can really grasp the full weakness that we possess, how much we need God, especially in this area of understanding. Okay? So let's go down into that deep water a little bit. Right now, in this moment, in every moment, we all perceive and we exist in three-dimensional space. Okay, what does that mean? It means our space that we're in right now has a length, a width, and a depth. Okay? Like I can move into the depth, or I can move along this axis. I can go up and down the length. That's the existence that we perceive spatially. There's another dimension that also acts on that. It's a temporal dimension called time, because I can be here, I can be there, but I can't be both. Okay, and that's because of time. Time limits us to being in one place. Okay, so we experience a four-dimensional existence, three dimensions spatially. I think everybody knows that. That's a simple truth that everybody can accept. But let's go a little bit farther, okay? Scientists are right now trying to figure out how the universe works and holds itself together. They're trying to develop a theory that will explain all of the universe's workings in a theory of everything, okay? There's four strong forces that hold the universe together. Magnetism, gravity, strong and weak force, okay, that work on an atomic level. And they're trying to explain how all four of those work together. Now, the most popular theories, the ones that have the best chance of explaining how these work together, are positing that there's at least 10 spatial dimensions, okay? We are perceiving 3, at least 10. In bosonic string theory, there's superstring theory, bosonic string theory, M theory, these theories. Bosonic string theory says there's 26 spatial dimensions. So we experience not even half of the spatial dimensions that science is positing must exist for these forces to work together. Now, as you contemplate that kind of higher dimensional space, which is going to be very difficult, I understand. It's a little heady, mind-boggling. I'd like for you guys to watch a video. This scientist, a real popular scientist, his name's Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's actually the scientist that is largely responsible for Pluto being declassified to a planetoid from a planet. When I was growing up, like I said, I'm 37, there were 9 planets. Now I think that they say there's 8, or there's an argument about it. But this guy is responsible for that. So let's take just a second, watch what he says about this higher dimensional space.
I'm at my desk, and the desk is a surface, okay? And I start putting pages down on the desk. I'm tiling them on the desk. And then I run out of room. I've exhausted the 2 dimensions of the surface of my desk. we have ways of accommodating this problem. And so we have page organizers that go upwards. So now when I don't have any more surface area of the desk, I can enter a third dimension and put pages there. If you are an ant embedded in this two-dimensional world of the surface of my desk, and you fill up the desk with these sheets of paper, the ant will say, "There is no more room." And I say, "Yes, there is. Watch me." And I take a piece of paper off the desk, put it in the page organizer, and according to the ant that's embedded in the two dimensions, that page disappeared. It disappeared into a dimension that ant does not have access to. What a brilliant invention this is. You can put practically an unlimited number of pages, far more pages above the desk than on the desk. So access to a third dimension is an extraordinarily useful storage device for a two-dimensional creature.
Does the ant trust you that what it cannot see is nevertheless there?
You have to then talk to it about this extra dimension. And then it will have to just trust you.
Yes.
Because watch what happens next. I now have my three-dimensional room, and I'm filling it with boxes. Now I've run out of space to put the boxes. But now a four-dimensional alien looks at us and says, "I got this. Just move it into the fourth dimension." What are you talking about? And the alien comes in, reaches in, takes one of the boxes, and then the box disappears. Disappears. It went into a fourth dimension. So this is what's going on when you have access to higher dimensions.
Wait, don't you have to then talk to somebody? Because as far as you know, if you're a scientist and you need data, what you have is something that you had, it's gone, and now a voice says, "I've got this."
Yeah, if
that data?
If it's a voice from the fourth dimension, I'm going to listen to it. If there's a voice coming out of the fourth dimension and makes one of my boxes disappear, I'm thinking it's got more power than I do and more knowledge of the space-time continuum. So I'm going with it.
He's absolutely right. If a voice from a higher dimension was to come down and say something to you, and Neil Tyson DeGrasse Tyson, he's a very eminent scientist, but he isn't what I would say necessarily a believer. He's agnostic. And when he's asked about God specifically, he has trouble saying. But right there, he just admitted that if a voice from a higher dimension was to tell him something, it would know much more than him, that he would listen to it, right? And I 100% agree with you. 100% agree. We should listen because we would know less than that thing. It would know more than us. Say it with me. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your path. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Okay, so just like he was talking about this little ant embedded in a two-dimensional space, you know, when I was growing up, I got a Nintendo, an NES, in 1988, okay? It was like one of the best days of my life. It was for Christmas, and it had a game, Duck Hunt. I don't know if you remember that one, but you shoot it, and I was like, oh, this is cool, Duck Hunt. And then I found Mario, which was the other game on the cart. Started running around this little guy and hitting bricks, and to me, being like 7 years old, it was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. And he's running around in a two-dimensional space on this screen, and you know, I can see everything he's doing. I can make him do the stuff, but guys, Mario, if Mario was actually a being, he wouldn't see the thing that we see. You know, we see that nice, colorful. What he would see would be like one-dimensional line segments, because he's a two-dimensional being looking straight forward. And so just in that little area there, we can see so much more than that he would be able to see as a real being, okay? If I reach my arm into the screen, and it went through his world, he would see a little line segment that looked like a circle if he walked around it, and it would be changing shape, and then it would be gone. Okay, and so I could do all kinds of things that would be super miraculous seeming to Mario because I am a three-dimensional creature being, and he's a two-dimensional, or he's limited to that. Okay, now just like that, if there was a four-dimensional being, they would be able to do things that would seem just as miraculous to us as we would to that ant or to Mario. Okay, and so just for a minute, I want you to try to imagine what the fourth dimension might be like. Okay, and what we're going to start, I'm just going to take you real quick through all the dimensions that we know about. If you could show this point, that's a point, okay? It has 0 dimensions. It's just an arbitrary little infinitesimal speck in the plane there. So go on to the next one. That's a 0-dimensional point. Okay, now this is a 1-dimensional line segment, okay? It has length, and it's bounded on each side by a 0-dimensional point. And then the next object would be a 2-dimensional square. Okay, it has length and width. This is the thing that Mario would be on, looking at the screen. Okay, but it's bounded on 4 sides by 1-dimensional line segments. Okay, you notice a pattern. Go up again. This is a 3-dimensional cube. Okay, it is bound on 6 sides by 2-dimensional squares. You can see each time it goes up, it's increasing by 2 of its boundaries, and the boundaries themselves are going up a dimension each time. Okay, a cool little thought experiment here. You can see that there's 2 squares, one on the top and one on the bottom. Okay, and then the other squares of the cube are distorted by a 3D spatial perspective. Which one, is that top square the front one, or is the bottom square the front one? I have a feeling that you're going to disagree about this, because some people are going to see the top square immediately. So a great exercise, mental exercise, would be to try and flip your perspective. Like, try to get your brain to see the bottom one as the front, and then try to get it to see the top one, and it'll just start rotating in your head. Fun stuff. If we were a 2-dimensional being like Mario, and we were thinking about this, what's the next dimension look like? We would try to draw a cube like this in 2 dimensions. Can you go to the next slide? Look what that looks like. That's what a cube looks like in 2 dimensions before it's folded up into 3D space. I thought that's pretty cool, actually. Okay, so now we got those patterns down. Let's try to imagine what the 4th dimensional cube, a hypercube is what they call it, or a tesseract. What does that look like? Next slide. Okay. That also looks like a cross, which is pretty cool. That's what it would look like when we try to draw this mathematically. It looks just like what the 2D universe would look like. It's not exactly right, though. Like, you can see, it's not entangled and folded up in space. So I have a video that some mathematician added a W axis, which is just another dimension, into an equation to try to see what this would look like in 4D space. Can we see that? Okay, this is so Salvador Dali painted a painting called Hypercube, where he put Jesus on the cross. Pretty cool. Watch as it folds into 4-dimensional space. So if this came into our space, it would look something like this. If they reach their hand into the, now watch it rotating around. It's going to blow your mind a little bit because it doesn't really turn around. It kind of moves through itself. You see that? Watch the cube. So it's making the same rotation in 4D space that cube's making in 3D space. And you can kind of see the similarities. But that is a very alien-looking, futuristic kind of thing, right? So what I want you to notice about that cube is that the sides are moving through each other. Like the mass of the cube is moving through itself. So what I'm saying is that a 4-dimensional being would be able to move through mass. Okay, like move through the door or the wall at will. And that would be super miraculous seeming, right? Kind of like when Jesus is resurrected and the disciples all lock themselves in a room, and then Jesus just appears in there with them, like he walked through the wall. Okay, a fourth dimensional being would be able to do that like it was a normal thing. It wouldn't be miraculous to them, but it would seem that way to us. Now, with that in mind, let's look at this next verse from David. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them. You have made mankind a little lower than the angels and crowned them with honor and glory. Okay, it says he made us lower, a little lower than the angels. What I want you to think about, I'm sure each one of you have thought about angels and read about them and demons and what are these things? What are they doing? Angels and demons are not like God. Okay, they don't exist in some transcendent place like God does. They're created beings. He created. They exist here with us, but we're a little lower than them. What does that mean? Well, we don't know for sure, but what it could mean is that they're higher dimensional, that they can walk, that they can appear here, there, and it seems miraculous to us. They do a lot of miraculous things in the Bible, but it's not really miraculous. They're just a little bit higher dimensionally than we are. And what that means is, just like I could watch Mario as a 2D, I see his whole world, I'm looking at him, he can't see me. Okay? They could be watching us. I'm not saying they could be. They are watching us right now. They're watching us and we can't see them, we can't tell because the dimension that they're in, we can't access it, but they can see into ours. Because just like we can see into the 2 dimensions, every other dimension, if you're a 5th, 6th, 7th dimension, all the other dimensions are included in that. You see what I'm saying? It's embedded in there. So they are watching us right now. They're watching us. We can't access the dimension that they're in. So what I want to impress with you guys today is, look, we don't even know really very much about the 3-dimensional universe that we're existing in. And we can't access the higher ones, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 at the minimum. So you know how much we know? Like if you just want to mathematically point it out, almost nothing. Almost nothing. We know a little bit more than a mouse, and that makes us feel good. But we don't know anything. And that's Jonah's problem. That's Jonah's problem and our problem. Like we have, I think, an arrogance about our intellect and how great we are. God showed mercy to the people of Nineveh. Okay? He showed them mercy. The Bible says, to Jonah, this seemed very wrong. And he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, "Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? That is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger, abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take away my life, for it's better for me to die than to live." But the Lord replied, "Is it right for you to be angry?" God's still trying to teach Jonah all throughout the rest of that 4th chapter. When Jonah answers the sailors, he seems to know God very well. He knows what God's told him. He knows God's heart here too. He says, "God, I knew you would forgive them. I knew you would." But what did he want? He wanted God to destroy them because he thought they were evil and they should be destroyed. And so he's angry with God. Why is he angry? Because he believes God did the wrong thing. He believes that what he wanted to do, that what he thinks is greater than what God told him, that what God wants to do. And that's where we get in trouble. We can know everything that God tells us, okay? We can know all about God. But if, like Jonah, we say, "I don't agree with you, God. I don't like what you say about this," then we elevate our feeble, blind intellect above the perfect knowledge of God. And that is folly. Albert Einstein, who's just a prolific thinker of the 20th century, I'm sure you all know about him and how he contributed to the theory of relativity and physics in general. Super smart guy, and he was really famous when he was alive, and people would ask him questions all the time. And a lot of times questions about God would come up. What do you think? What do you think about God? Well, he said, when it comes to God and the universe, we're in the position of a little child entering a huge library filled with many books in many languages. The child knows someone must have written these books. It does not know how. It does not understand the languages in which they are written. The child dimly suspects a mysterious order in the books, but doesn't know what it is. That, it seems to me, must be the attitude of even the most intelligent human being toward God. He's saying we're in a library, we're little kids, we don't know any of the languages, all we see is books. We don't know who wrote them we don't know anything essentially, except there's books in the library. And that, I think, is extremely generous, an extremely generous assessment of what we know and how we stand before God. If we took all of our intellects, all of our minds together, and added them all together, we still wouldn't know anything, guys. That's what I'm saying. We don't know anything. Alexander Fleming, who was a Nobel Prize winning biologist, he discovered penicillin, okay, which led to the development of antibiotics and has saved millions, maybe billions of lives. This is what he had to say about God. My greatest discovery was that I needed God, and that I was nothing without him, and that he loved me and showed his love by sending Jesus to save me. There are literally hundreds of quotes like this from eminent scientists, Nobel Prize winning physicists, chemists, astrophysicists, all kinds of things, where they get to a point where they're like, look, I see what God did, and it's so far beyond me. So far beyond me. The Apostle Paul, when he's talking to the Colossians, he says, my goal is that you may be encouraged in heart and united in love, so that you may have the full riches of complete understanding, in order that you might know the mystery of God, namely Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Paul says he wants us to have the full riches of complete understanding. Well, how can that be? How can our limited minds, our limited hearts be able to have such a prize? Well, he says it's Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. In John chapter 14, Jesus says to his disciples, I am the truth. Okay, that is such a profound statement. He doesn't say, I know the truth. He says, I am the truth. So if you want to know something, you got to go to him. Get him to tell you the answer, and it will be the truth. It will be knowledge. You will know it. Jesus' brother, James, he says in chapter 1 of his epistle, if any of you lacks wisdom, and let's be honest, guys, that's every single one of us. I hope that's what you're getting from this today, because we lack wisdom. You should ask God, who graciously gives to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. You might notice that sometimes when I'm praying for us in our service, I'll say, God, show us your ways. Teach us, because that's what we need every day. Every day we need him to show us the way, because we don't see it. We don't know. So let's say this together one more time, and let it be the anthem, the prayer of our life. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Let's pray. God, I pray as we leave here today, as we go back into our community, every day we'll wake up and say, God, I need you to show me. Show me what you want. Show me the truth. Let me walk in that, in your ways, and not my own.